Okay, so we're going to give this a start. Fingers crossed that it will actually work. I heard that yesterday it was perfectly silent, so go figure, right? I also heard that they're supposed to be done after tomorrow, at least with this roof. I think they're going to make noise over there, but this is supposed to be better. So that's a good thing for us. So hopefully you were all able to watch the lecture from last semester so that we can continue on. Today we're going to talk about portfolios. You got two handouts today. One is obviously the exercise for today, and the other one is assignment 107. And no, I didn't make a mistake. I do, in fact, know how to count. But number 107 is the final for this class. And what we do as part of the final is a portfolio of your work for this semester, for previous semesters, for anything else that you may have done architecturally. In the back, one of the things that I do today is I bring back all of or a selection of the portfolios from previous years so that you guys can have a look at what other people have done. To my knowledge, I went through them again this morning. I believe every single one of these did receive an A. I used to bring the whole bunch, and I think people got confused as what was good quality and what wasn't or whatever. So I try to cull out the ones that got A's. Some of them go back a ways. Here's fall 2012, for example. But it's still a good example of a portfolio. Part of the reason that I like to show you these as examples, or at least let you look at these as examples, is because these show the same projects or similar projects to the ones that you're working on here at school. A lot of them show the Calder Museum. A lot of them show the Mondrian Museum. Those kinds of things are in these, so you can see how people presented those as ideas. Okay? I will, in lecture today, show you examples of more professional portfolios. We'll nitpick, pick them apart, show different ideas, etc. And those are good, but they don't necessarily show your exact project. So sometimes when you're showing your exact project, it can be helpful to see, oh, this is how somebody went through and how they worked on it. We start assignment 107 today. We will revisit it several times as the semester goes on. So there's a reason that you get it today, even though it's out of order. And that is because we need to start. You guys right now have two assignments that you've finished, right? 101 and 102. Both of those can go into a portfolio. So you can start on it today. As you finish assignment 103, that can go in. So you're going to continue adding to it as the semester goes along. Portfolios are never static. You always have to keep working on them. Okay? So we'll go through that. The other thing that we'll spend time at toward the end of the semester is we'll actually talk about cover design and what goes into making a good cover. And I'll show you examples of covers and that sort of thing. So that's going to be revisited. It's probably going to be in the Illustrator section or maybe a little bit after the Illustrator section when we'll go back to that. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about portfolios. And in the process of talking about portfolios, I'm going to try to weave in a lot of the things that you should have seen in the lecture from last class, right? So we'll talk about margins and column intervals and that sort of thing, just as a way of reinforcing those concepts that we talked about, okay? So fundamentally, a architectural portfolio is an absolutely critical thing for you to have and for you to work with and for you to be able to show somebody, okay? Anybody have a portfolio already? Okay, a couple of you are nodding your head. That's a good thing, right? If I was sitting in your shoes way back when I was in the beginning and you asked me if I had a portfolio, I would have shaken my head no, right? The truth is that it takes time to develop a portfolio. It takes time to develop work worthy of a portfolio. But fundamentally in the design field, a portfolio is how we show who we are as a designer. So it's really about telling the story of you, what you're interested in, what you're good at. Okay? It's not about here's all this stuff that I can do, right? It's about who you are as a designer. And whether you're going to end up in the field of architectural design or you're going to end up in the field of industrial design or graphic design or whatever, the portfolio is the common thread between all those design fields. When you walk into an office because you want a job, right? They're going to ask for some kind of a cover letter and your basic credentials and that sort of thing. The other thing they're always going to ask for is a portfolio of your work. Right? It's the easiest way for somebody to assess who you are as a designer and whether you'll fit in with the fabric of that company. You go on to Berkeley or to Cal Poly, you may go into a studio setting and they may be trying to divide you up by interest or which particular faculty person you're going to work with. what are they going to do? They'll ask you for your portfolio, and you'll have to show them. And if it's not good, you get placed in a different portfolio, in a different group, right? You want the best portfolio you can possibly have, okay? Make sure to tell the story of you as the designer. Okay? It is all about you. The other thing that is this tendency, and you'll see some of the examples in the back do this, and that is that you divide it up by certain skills that you have. Okay? This is all the stuff I've done in InDesign. This is all the work I can do in Photoshop. Boy, I'm an awesome at rendering in V-Ray. Here's all my renderings, right? At your level, that seems logical, right? And you'll see in the back when you look at them, a lot of people have chosen to do that as their organization strategy. But it doesn't really tell the story of you as a designer. It tells the story of here's all the skills I have, right? Maybe that would be helpful if you were applying for a job as a draftsperson or as a visualization artist or something like that, because you're just showing, hey, I can do all this visualization. But it's not really you as a designer. So if you're looking for, in a school setting, to become a better designer, obviously you're going to want to show your design abilities. If you're looking at a job and you want to be part of the design process, you want to show yourself as a designer. Okay? What makes you unique and different? That's always really critical, right? Remember, you apply for a job, they're seeing 20 other portfolios. What makes yours stand out? What makes you you? You need to have some kind of an introductory page, right? And this introductory page varies, depends on who you are as a designer as to what you're going to decide to put on that page, right? It's going to be some kind of a table of contents, list of projects, some organizational strategy that will tell you where your stuff is in the portfolio, what your projects are, who you are, what your name is, what your background is maybe, right? It might contain more resume type information like where you went to school or something like that. It might not. You have to decide what's appropriate, and I'll show you some examples of that as you go forward. Okay? You also have to keep your portfolio current. Okay? If I walked into a firm to get a job and I handed them the portfolio that I used to apply to grad school in 2005, would that be very current? No. Right? So I've done a lot of things since 2005. I want my portfolio to reflect those things that I've done. And if I'm not showcasing that, it's not really a fair assessment of who I am today. So you always want to make sure that your portfolio is current. It's something you're updating, which talks a lot about how you organize your work today. So if you think carefully and you work hard and you create a good organizational structure for your work, i.e. layout and that sort of thing, then it's easy to just slip in new projects and pull out old projects and just update the portfolio as you go along, right? If your portfolio is really custom to a specific piece of work, because that's your best piece of work and everything's designed around this one piece, when you pull that piece out, it's going to feel out of place. So you want that design, the graphic design of the portfolio, to live depending on whatever you put into it and whatever you take out of it. Okay? The portfolio is fundamentally a living document, and it needs to be updated constantly. So I would say it's a good idea at the end of a semester. All right, you finish in December. This December we get an extra long break. Sweet, right? I think it's 6 weeks. It's awesome. You finish in December, take a week. Update that portfolio. Make it better. Right? It's a perfect time to do it. You finish in May, you do the same thing. Then you're always going to have a relatively current portfolio that you can show somebody. Okay? Know the purpose of each project in your portfolio. Right? This is another thing that I think young designers do, is they feel like I don't have enough stuff in my portfolio, therefore I'm going to throw everything that I do in my portfolio. Right? Well, sometimes you do two projects that are very close to one another. I mean, I would even argue that the Mondrian Museum and the Calder Museum are relatively similar projects. Okay, I'm not telling you right now don't put them both in, right? But as you go forward and you start to do better projects, one of those is going to fall out faster than the other because they're both museums based on a historical artist. Does that make sense? Right? They're very similar in what they are. So if you're showing who you are as a museum designer, maybe you include all the museums you've ever done. But if you're showing who you are as an architectural designer, it would be better to show one museum, one design school that you did in 220, one housing project that you did somewhere else, because it shows diversity of what you can do. Right? That's a better strategy. So if you think about what is the purpose of my project in the portfolio, it's easier to pick this belongs in and this doesn't. If I want to show my skills at V-Ray rendering, for example, right? Maybe you include your cabin projects from 136 because you can show a bunch of your skills there. So it's valuable not necessarily because the design was fantastic, but because you can show all of these skills that you have. Right? You still present it in a design context. You still talk about the fundamentals behind your design decisions, but you're trying to show your graphics in that sense. Right? And so depending on what you're doing, you just want to make sure that there is a specific purpose. Right? You want to avoid a repetition. Right? Let's say I'm really good at 3D renderings. Right? Well, it's tempting to just look, here's the 3D rendering for this project. Here's a 3D rendering for that project, right? And somebody who's looking through your portfolio is just going to see 3D rendering after 3D rendering after 3D rendering and say, yeah, he's pretty good at doing the 3D renderings, but can he do anything else? Right? So again, identify the purpose, show a diversity in your skills, and your portfolio is going to be significantly better. Okay, so here's a sticky one. Okay? You do group work at school. And it's always challenging because you both kind of collaborate. You do some things, your partner does some things. And guess what? You apply to Berkeley together, you show your portfolios, you both have the same project. Well, who did what? Okay? You want to think very carefully about what you did as the contribution to the group, and therefore show the stuff that you did. Right? Obviously, you're going to have to show some stuff about the project as a whole. Right? It wouldn't make sense if it wasn't that. But focus or spin the part of this project that you're showing to be the stuff you actually did. And identify, this is a group project, and this is what I did. Right? If you do that, it will make sense, and it will be clear when the admissions people or the scholarship people get two portfolios with two people that are showing the same stuff. Who did what? And that's really important, right? And of course, sometimes you're in the group, hopefully this doesn't happen very often, where you do all the work and your partner does nothing, right? In which case, show it as your project, okay? Unfortunately, the project, your partner who didn't do the work will probably show it as their project too, right? Even though it's not really. So in the context of you having control, you want to think about showing your work as your work. Right? Your contribution to the group as your work. A killer portfolio is well designed. Right? Fundamentally, you can have the best design work ever, and if you don't show a good portfolio, or if you don't show it well, you haven't designed the portfolio to complement the work well, the work won't show well. Right? You really have to take time. You have to think carefully about a portfolio. There's a reason that I picked the portfolio as the final design project of this class. Right? It's probably the most important design document that you'll do, really. You do a little work in a project here, right? Maybe in the work field you do some work on a project, you get paid for that project, that's great. But that work in a portfolio is what's going to give you the next project and let you keep working as the designer. So it's an absolutely critical process. Okay? So great portfolios have a strong graphic design bias, right? Good, strong graphic design, clean lines, those kinds of things will always show the work better. Great portfolios take time to evolve. Okay? I can almost promise you that the work that you do today as part of your portfolio will not end up being your final portfolio. Right? When I applied to grad school in 2005, part of the grad school process was you had to submit a portfolio. And it was very specific. You got 12 pages, double-sided, and that was your portfolio. Nothing more. That's it. Okay? I did 7 complete portfolios, front to back, cover to cover, before I decided on the one that I was going to use to apply. 7 full ones. Right? Different organization strategies, different variants, different fonts, different looks. And in the process of doing that, I had people that I knew look at it. I went back to some of my old professors and I said, can you look at my portfolio? What do you think? Can you give me feedback? Right? They would pick it apart and I'd go back and do it again. So the best portfolios take time to evolve in order to really show your work well. Okay? So give it that time to evolve and start working on it now. There's a reason that I'm giving you this project today, and we have 2.5 months left. Right? By the way, we're almost a third, or a little over a third through the semester. Right? So we have 2/3 left. Let's make a good portfolio. So let's talk a little bit about the setup and understanding the setup. And obviously, I'm going to walk you through this in the world of InDesign so that we can talk through it. So if you remember, right, we talked about the inner versus the outer margin. Right? The outer margin is usually half the inner margin, or the inner margin is 2 times the outer margin. Why would that be? Ideas? Thoughts? Are you awake? It's 8 a.m., no coffee yet. Oh, come on, it's 8:25. Okay, I'm going to walk into the back and I'm going to grab a portfolio and we're going to talk through it. Okay, so good old Kyle Rogers from fall of 2012. We're going to pull up him as an example. Okay, so if I'm looking at this portfolio and I open it up, what happens in the center of the portfolio? Right? There's a big binding right here with a bunch of holes. Okay? If we don't accommodate that binding with the holes, right, we're going to cut off parts of our work. So the inner margin, this is what I mean by the inner margin, should be bigger than the outer margin. Okay? If we were doing a portfolio like this one, which is actually one of the best ones, I think this is from about 2008, right? Alex Davies. Okay? It's bound differently. You see no spiral or anything, right? When you go to open it, right, notice that there's a crease in the center. Right? If you put too much content, like say type, right into the crease, are you going to be able to read that? No, you're going to sit there and try to pull it open so you can read it. Okay? So it's not a good strategy for how you're showing it. So we're going to make the inner margin twice the distance of the outer margin. Right? So if, for example, the outer margin is a 1/4 inch, the inner margin is going to be a 1/2 inch. Right? Generally, you want to accommodate at least 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch for that spiral binding if you're going to do a spiral binding. Right? It doesn't mean that you can't have an image go into that margin. Right? You can't have an image that goes across it. You just have to recognize that it's going to be cut out and there's going to be little holes and stuff. So you have to think about that ahead of time. Okay? You want to anticipate the binding style. Right? So what is the binding style? Are you going to do the spiral? Are you going to do the comb binding? Are you going to do a metal binding? Are you going to sew it together by hand? What? And how much space do you need for that? Right? And I'm dead serious when I say sew it together by hand. I've had a portfolio that was sewn together by hand. It's awesome. It's back there. Right? So there are different strategies for how you put this together. Okay? The next thing that's critical is something called bleed. Right? Imagine for a second that you're a print shop that's going to print out Time magazine. Okay? You're going to print millions of copies of Time magazine, if people still read Time magazine in print form. You know, whatever. I don't know. Us Weekly, right? There's got to be some magazine that you guys read that is in that kind of form. Okay? You go to the print shop. Is every single magazine that comes out printed exactly to the edge of the magazine? No. Right? There's no way that they could print all of those consecutively and have it go perfectly seamless to the outside edge of the magazine. So what they do is they print beyond the margins, and then when they go to cut the pieces of the magazine, there's extra color, extra photograph that gets cut off. So you don't end up with a little white border around a photo when it's supposed to bleed all the way off the page. So what bleed is it's a little bit of extra space of your photo, of your color, of whatever it is, that goes beyond what your actual page size is, which lets you cut it or trim it without having a little white border or something awkward. Okay? Certainly it's more important for large print shops. You're running Time magazine, Us Weekly, and they're printing 1 million copies. One of them's going to get skewed funny. right? It's inevitable. When you're printing your portfolio, if you're printing it yourself, do you have a little bit more control? Yeah, probably, right? You might not have it. You might not have this problem. But it's certainly something to be aware of. And if you're going to a professional print shop, they will probably ask you for bleed. So they have room before they cut your document. Okay? So I'm going to show you how to set up bleed today. Generally, the minimum bleed is 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch more, right? You can go up to maybe 1/4 if you want to have extra. Most of this 1/8 of an inch should be cut off. So you don't want something important that's in that 1/8 of an inch, but you want a little bit of extra. Okay? And I'll show you how to do that today. The other thing that we haven't talked too much about, because we haven't even gotten to color yet, which we will, is that the color space that we want to be working in is something called CMYK, right? Cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. Key is black. Okay? Anybody ever had to change out toner in a color laser printer before? Right? A few of you? There's 4 toner cartridges, right? Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay? So because we're doing printing, those are our colors that we're going to use. So the color space in InDesign should match up to those colors so that everything matches. Okay? You can convert after the fact, but generally it's better. If you were going to the web, monitors show in RGB color space, so you would be doing RGB color space design. We'll talk about that in color theory. Don't worry. Okay, we'll get to that. Okay, so this is a setup. Okay, a sample setup file. In this case, we don't have the landscape format. We have the portrait format of 2 pages side by side, right? We've got the margins identified, right? So this dotted line that goes around right there, right? That's our margin. Okay, it's 1/4 of an inch, 0.25 inches to the edge of the page. Right? Generally speaking, we want any of our major content to appear inside of that margin. Okay? Occasionally, we'll have an image that goes off of that. But like I said, we want to have that extra bleed space so that if something goes full color and you cut it afterward, right, that's going to be 1/8 of an inch right there, 0.125, right, which is right along there, that outer edge, right there. I should probably highlight it instead. Right, it's right there. That's that bleed that we're talking about. Okay? Notice also that the outer margin, 0.25, inner margin, 0.5, and 0.5. Right, so it goes down into that gutter in between. It's too bad. Okay? So I'm going to show you some examples of actual work. Actual portfolios. To me, this is one of the best portfolios that I've seen. This is volume 3 of Alex Holgreff's portfolios. He runs a website called Visualizing Architecture, which is absolutely fantastic. Anybody seen it before? Nope. Okay, so you have more homework. Go to his website. It's really cool. Right? He does a lot of really great stuff. He's a visualization artist. He has a master's degree, but he does visualizations for a living. Anyway, so this is his portfolio. He has some articles that he's written up that define how he goes, what his process is, and whatever. This is the cover for his portfolio. I'm going to go, there it is in kind of 3D format. Right? Unfortunately, it looks a lot prettier on screen than it does on this screen. Such is life. Okay? But I like to at least show the cover. We're going to come back to cover design and talk about what makes a good cover and stuff later on in the semester. So, first page, right, was that table of contents, that informational page. And most of these drawings that I'm showing you right now are all spreads. So there's a division of the page right here, right? And we would fold the pages over, right, one to the next. Does that make sense? So we're seeing the whole spread laid out. Okay? So we talked about what information is on that index page or table of contents page. Right? And in this case, it's 2 pages because they're back and front. Right? But we have very clear layout. We have contents. Right? And again, this is from year 2014. We have a nice column that runs down here with little graphics. We have a larger column that runs down here with little descriptions. And then we've divided it up into various projects. So there's going to be 4 total projects. It's very clear organization. These are the 4 projects that I'm showing you in the portfolio, right? There's a little graphic, this little graphic. Here, let me wipe this for a second. This little graphic corresponds to that project. It's shown on the page, on every page that's related to that project. So there's a graphic cue to, this is all the projects that are related to whatever it is, the visitor center, right? Then we have another graphic right here, right? And those are all related to the 9 square cube project. Okay? The other thing is, I told you that there was other information sometimes that shows up. Okay? In this case, he has his website. He also has a copyright notice. Part of the reason he has a copyright notice is he actually sells sample portfolios. So you can buy it and get a physical copy and look at his portfolio. Okay? So that would be why there's a copyright. There's really no need for a copyright on your particular portfolio. Okay? He also, if we look carefully, this is a bunch of gibberish text right there. He's anticipating putting something else in, but right now there isn't anything. Okay? Oops. Okay, so I don't know that all of these are in the exact correct order or whatever, but I want to kind of walk through what these pages are and how they're defined and kind of what makes this a good page. Okay? So fundamentally, gut reaction, intuition, does this feel like a good page? Yeah, I'd say it feels like a very nice page. Okay? So we have a large color image, right? We have a simple 2-column layout on each page, right? So we could divide each page into 2 columns, right there. Okay? Obviously, this is that gutter that we were talking about, so that these pages would flip over. Okay? So we've divided it into columns. We have a nice column interval right here that separates the text. Right, that runs right down there. That separates, gives us a little space. The title is pretty clear, but it spans across both sets and is yellow, so it obviously stands out. If we were looking at a hierarchy, that's what we see first in terms of text. It's obvious that's what the title is. Okay? Notice also that up here in the corner, there's that cube icon that we were talking about. Okay? I think in this particular page, this was an earlier version of the one that eventually ended up in the portfolio. There's a few more squares. But notice that it falls in both corners of the page. Right? Subtle change on this side is just inverted because obviously it's on a black background instead of on a white background. But it's still there. Consistent placement, top left corner, top right corner of every page of the project. Okay? The text, right, is right here. That description is going to tell us something about the page. It's not overcrowded. There's not lots of stuff crammed into it. And the other key element is the text isn't big. One of the biggest problems with portfolios is people make the text too big. Right? You're looking at it in printed form. You don't need a giant font to get your information across. Okay? Small font is a good thing. So let's look at the next page. Okay? Similar vocabulary, right? On this page, we divided it, right, where we had, there's a division. This is all colored image content right here, right? This is our informational page, or piece. When we look at the next slide, right, same portfolio. In this case, we have, we have this, right, as one piece of image content, and this is another. Okay? Very similar in layout page to page. And the last page, the right side, or excuse me, the left side was the big color, black and white. Right? I know it was black and white, but it was the big image. Right? In this case, we've gone more line drawings on the bigger side, and the color image on the left is a little bit smaller. Okay? But again, I think this is nicely done in terms of how it divides up the page. Right? We have a similar large font, right? That's clearly the title of this particular piece. We have a smaller block of text down here. That's clearly information about this particular project. Again, text is small. Critical to see small text. Okay? We have the same little cube icon showing up in the same location on both pages. Okay? We have a nice 4-column layout here. That's defined. But the other thing is that this text here spans 3 columns, not 4. So in this case, he's thinking about line length, right? If this text went all the way to the end of this column, it'd be really hard to read. It's a really long sentence to read. So we want it to be shorter. There's a reason in magazines that they write in short columns, because it's faster to read. We don't have to read all the way across the page. Okay? So you want to think about that as you're presenting this information. We move on to the next page. Different project. Because it's a different project, right? Different corner icons. We switched. It's very clear graphically which images belong to which project. Right? It's very subtle, but very, very clear. Okay? Similar placement right here, division, just like we had in the previous. So there's a vocabulary that's starting to emerge as we look page to page. So the project just changed, but we still have 1/2 there and 1/2 right here, or one small piece right here. Do you guys see how that vocabulary is staying consistent? Page to page. That's important. Okay? Again, small text, right? In this case, I'm a little disappointed that the title text is so small. If we compare it to the last slide, the title text is a little bit bigger. To me, I think that those should be the same size so that there's a consistency to every project. Okay? Graphically, we still have a division here, right? We have the full color image on that side, but we have a subtle division into 3 columns because of these icons at the bottom of the page, right? He's borrowing that with the same icon here. There's also a really nice flow line that runs across the page right there. Okay? But that flow line isn't consistent to other pages just yet. Oops. Okay? So here's the next page in this. Now to me, if we were just making a general commentary, to me this page is too yellow. Right? It's an overdominance of this grunge texture. I think it takes away too much of the actual graphics of the piece. But that's me nitpicking it. Right? Obviously, he thought this style was appropriate for this particular project, and it can be done. But I do want to point out a couple things about this particular project. Okay? So once again, there's our division. There's our large half. There's our small half. Right? Again, consistency. In the whole portfolio, it's always laid out that way. Okay? The other thing, right, is we have that nice break here. That's consistent. We have a full-size color image on this side, but here's a flow line that runs across that page right there. Okay? This distance, so from right there to right there, can you guys see that in the black? Let me draw it right here. That distance there is the same distance as it was down on the bottom last time in the previous page. So it's the same distance. So it's consistent even though it moved up to the top versus down below. Okay? The graphics are the same in both corners. Again, consistency. This is all about this particular project. Right? Now, he uses the text is the same there. The text size is the same here. This is tricky though. Hold on one second. Hold your question. This is tricky. When you do white text on a black background, if you do the same font and the same thickness of the letters, the same thickness of the stroke, it's much harder to read when it's inverted. Okay? So I would recommend in doing a portfolio being consistent with the color background the text is always on. So if you want the text to be on black, make all the text on a black background or a gray background, because you'll need to thicken up the strokes. You need to make them a little thicker to be readable. Okay? So the fact that he's flipped from the white to the black, he's going to have a problem with how that is actually read, right? And in this case, I think the text, probably the stroke of the text should be a little bit thicker to read against the black background. So you just want to be aware of that kind of a change. You had a question?
I was a bit concerned about the text in the previous pages. I was going to ask you if it should be justified or not. And I thought maybe it's a style and perhaps helps credibility if it's not justified. But then on that last page, it was justified. So that kind of disappointed me in terms of consistency.
Well, and this is, it's extraordinarily easy for me to throw pictures up here and for us to nitpick them. And I'm going to get to the justification in just a second. And to say, well, wait a minute, you know, your text here is not justified, and then on the next page it's justified. And when you start to put together a whole portfolio, it's easy to make a mistake. It's easy to decide to do everything justified and then say, wait a minute, it doesn't look right, or whatever. Generally speaking, I believe the non-justified text, so in this case, the ragged edge right here in the text, is a better, more readable block of text than justified. And there's a few examples in the back that justified, and you can see the spacing just gets really weird unless you have a certain density of text. If you have a very small font with a lot of line length to it, justified works because you've got a lot of space that you can space out the words. If it's a narrow block of text and you don't have too many words, or the font size is too big, therefore you don't have too many words, the spacing gets really weird and it gets choppy and hard to read. So that was a very good observation. We've got the non-justified right on here, the ragged end, and then on the next page, right? Well, no, actually, there. The one before, was it two back?
The orange.
Other way. Yes, right? So there it is right there. And that's not. Now, in this particular case, it's just placeholder text. So it doesn't look that bad. And he may discover, when he actually puts real text in, that it starts to look really weird. Right? So you want to pay attention to that sort of thing. That's a good detail to have caught. And I think generally speaking, you want to stay consistent throughout the portfolio. So another example here, very clearly 3 columns. So we break the previous, you know, where we had this whole area and then the smaller area. We break that with this. But it's still a very clear 3 columns here, 3 columns here. Right? So it still has a clear order to it. And he uses those 3 columns in a slide a little bit ago when we had the one right here. There's those, oops. There's those 3 columns again. So there again is consistency. It's not necessarily used on every page, but there's consistency when he uses it. So there they are. I don't know that I would have picked the text going sideways. It's the one place that he puts text. But again, here we are nitpicking the portfolio. Right? It's always easy to do that after the fact.
And when it's not your portfolio.
And when it's not your portfolio, which is all about, you know, taking yourself out of the possession of it. Okay? I don't know him. He's not here. It's really easy to talk about it. Right? If we had my portfolio up here, it might be more difficult. Right? Now, I would argue that I've had enough practice to be able to stand aside and actually analyze it. But the point is still well made. Okay? So here we go. Here's another page. This is the full color rendering. Okay? And if you really just stop and look at the image itself, he's really good at what he does. I mean, these are spectacular images. Right? A lot of Photoshop work coupled in. Very, very well done. Okay? But there is consistency on this page to every other page. So yes, this is the full color rendering page, but we still have those icons in the upper corners. The text is the same. The body of text right here is the same column width. So there's a lot of consistency, even though the layout is slightly different. I would argue that this, because of that division there, starts to divide this into the traditional large and small sizes of the page. Okay? Because of that division. I don't think it's as critical here, but I do think he did a really nice job of keeping the distance between the photos small. Okay? There's still definitely clearly a white break between the photos, but it's not too much space, and I think that's well done. On subsequent pages, it would be consistent. That margin between the photos would be consistent. Okay, so let's look at another one. Okay? I have no idea who this person is. Right? Not one of my students. It was just one that I found online. Okay? And you can do this. You can find portfolios online. But I think it's a good example, and it's a nice portfolio. So we look first at the color of the cover. Right? Black and white. Relatively simple, but really well composed. Right? We talked about composition in the Photoshop section. In this context, we have the black, we have the little white glued together piece of model. It's slightly off center. It works nicely as a square composition. Okay? So you want to think about that when we get to cover. But again, we'll talk about covers later on. First page, like I said, the first page of the portfolio or first spread of the portfolio needs to have the table of contents. Again, we have little summary drawings, right? In this case, he has page numbers as well as the little bit of text that describes it. And then on over here on the left side of the page, right, he has almost a full resume. Okay, so a lot more information than Alex Holgraf showed, right? But maybe this person was looking to get a job. So bundling in the resume with it might not have been a bad idea, right? Less paperwork to lose. Here's my portfolio and resume all in one. Might be worth it. I don't know. You want to think about the purpose. If you were still in school, you were still a student, you were trying to get into a specific studio section or something, would this information be that relevant? Probably not. Right? So you want to be aware of the context. Okay? So here we go. First page in the portfolio, right? Very, very clear. And part of the reason that I like this particular portfolio so much is the text is very clear. Right? If we look here at the text, right? A new school is largest, a little bit more subsequent information below it, nice font size and text below it. Okay, very clear, and you'll see page after page that it's consistent. The other thing that shows up on his pages is down here in the lower corners, right? He has little footnote information about the particular project. He has page numbers, right? He has little like text, this is the particular project, right? So it's very clear page after page, and I'm going to show you how to set this kind of stuff up. So Alex's portfolio was graphic. We had the little icon that showed up page after page. This one shows up with just a little bit of text. Right? It's a different strategy, but it's still a successful one because it organizes the pages. Okay? We also have, right, kind of one column, two columns, and then in this case, this is the whole page. Okay? As we go forward to the next slide, oh, I thought I had another slide of his work. Apparently I don't. Okay? Sorry. We move on. Okay? Different cover, different look to it. Looks a little bit better on the screen than it does on the big screen. Okay? First page, table of contents. Very clean, no graphics at all. Okay? Page numbers, what's going on, no other information. So as I said, the information about yourself on this page is optional. We had one where we just showed a full resume. Now we have one where we don't show anything. It looks like he has the resume on the next page. But still something to think about. Okay, so there's the resume. And here's some images. Okay, so this is that first page. Now when you start to organize your portfolio, it's generally good practice to put your best project first. Right, so you think about what studio project you've done, what's the best one? What did you get the best review on? What do you feel is the best one? That goes number one. Okay? If you think about somebody looking at your portfolio, okay, let's take the Berkeley example. Okay? Berkeley grad school, and I'll use grad school because they require a portfolio when you apply. Okay? Berkeley grad school, per year, maybe 15 to 30 spots. Okay? Applicant pool, maybe 3,000 trying to get in. Okay? So you have pretty slim odds of getting in. But furthermore, the people that are reviewing the applications and the portfolios have 3,000 portfolios to look through to pick 30. Okay? Are they going to look at every page of your portfolio? Are they going to read every word in your portfolio? No. What are they going to do? They're going to open it. They'll see the table of contents. They'll look carefully at the next couple pages. They'll flip through the next pages, and they'll look at the last page, and they'll close it and move on to the next one. Right? Total time of reading, 30 seconds, maybe a minute, if you're lucky. Okay? So when you start to set up your portfolio, what goes first is absolutely critical, because this is probably the page they're going to look at. Okay? So in this particular example, the whole page, very graphic, high saturated image. Right? Well composed on the page. I worry a little bit on this particular page because of the gutter. right? The space, so here's the spread division right there, right? If you imagine this as a book, a lot of the detail of the architecture gets lost in that fold. I think if I were doing it, I would have set this up so that that is over here a little bit more, right? And adjust the page. Or vice versa. Maybe it's over here a little bit more. Okay? Just so that you don't lose the architecture in the fold. Okay? Text very well established. Clear hierarchy of text. I think this is pretty readable on the color saturated background because the text is thick enough to be readable. Right? The best way to determine that this is readable is to actually print it. Right? Do a test print. Costs 25 cents here. You guys are so lucky because printing's cheap. Do a test print and see. All right. Next page in the portfolio, again, high saturation of images, but the column setup is very, very similar. Okay? If we go back here, notice we have a small column of text that runs along this outer edge. Right? We have a larger content box here, and we have a full color image here. We go forward. Full color image here. Content box here. Small column of text. Consistency. Right? Next page. Right? And this is very diagrammatic, very technical, a lot of information on this page, but similar in setup. The left-hand side has 3 columns. The right-hand side ends up with 4 columns. This is probably driven by the fact that this is a 4-level building. So you need those 4 floor plans to be lined up next to each other. Okay? If it was only 3 levels, it would feel better because you'd have 3 columns and then 3 columns. But sometimes you have to make adjustments. Okay? Okay, so this is Bashir's portfolio. He did this while he was here at DVC. I'll show you one example of DVC portfolio so that you can see what a portfolio would look like with the same stuff that you guys have to put in it. Okay? This just happens to be one that I have a digital format of, so we're going to go through it. Okay? So first page was always about the index, the table of contents. Whether you call it an index, a table of contents, whether it's titled at all, it's that introductory page, and that's up to you. Okay? Clear hierarchy of text here. No images, right? Just the text. Bold, intro, projects, digital tools and fabrications, and theory. Those are his primary categories. Then we have subcategories of what's going on in the various pages. Okay? This was his introductory page. Okay? Same font choice, bold, all caps, intro. Then we've got smaller font that talks about who he is and what he's doing. Okay? Primary text hierarchical item, all caps. Then we move into the lowercase. Right? That's how he's defining it. Few sketches, right? 2 columns. And then essentially it's a 2-column layout with 1 picture that spans both columns. Okay? So we move into the next. Good text hierarchy. The fonts in the Mondrian Museum match up with the fonts here. Sometimes you run into the fact that you used a particular font on your project. It's different than your portfolio. You have to think about whether you're trying to show your portfolio as, here's the whole board that I did exactly as I turned it in, or whether you modify and you make your work better for the portfolio. Very, very frequently, you change your work, you make improvements, you make it better before it goes into the portfolio. Right? There were several projects that I did in for my grad school portfolio that I did when I was an undergrad that I completely redid before I put them into my portfolio. So just because you finished it in class doesn't mean that that's a done design. Right? You can always go back and change it, modify it, make it better, make it fit in your portfolio. Right? Photos are great complements, especially if you make models. So making those good quality model photos matter. Take your time when you photograph the models. Right? The worst thing that you can do is have spent all this time on a model, take a photo that you think is okay. In 3 months, you've lost the model, it fell off the shelf, it got broken, whatever it is. You go back and you want to put the photo in your portfolio and the photo's blurry, or it's not exposed correctly, or whatever. Take your time, take a good quality photo, make sure that those photos can live in a portfolio with good quality stuff, right? Similar to the Alex layout, right? 3/4 of the page, 1/4 of the page. This was group work, right? He very clearly is pointing out these are the people in my group that I worked with. Okay. Then as it starts to evolve, we show some basic context about the project, right, in this particular page. Then we move on into the specific stuff that he did relating to the project, right? We talked about that as part of the group work phase. Make sure you showcase and show this is the stuff that I worked on relating to this particular design project. Right? And another example, again, consistency. The 3/4 of the page, the 1/4 of the page. Or maybe it's 2/3 of the page, 1/3 of the page. Right? But it's consistency layout after layout. Okay? So a lot of this lecture was based on an article in this from this blog. This is also Alex Holgreff's, so that's another article that you can read. Alex Holgreff's visualizingarchitecture.com has a lot of really great examples in it as well. Okay? So we're going to switch over into the world of InDesign. I'll talk you through these multi-page layouts and kind of how we go about setting up a portfolio, etc. Okay? Okay, so I apologize for that little delay. I was trying to make sure that I logged into everything before we got started. So we're going to start in the world of InDesign. I'm going to repeat a few of the things that were in the lecture last class that you hopefully watched on YouTube due to the noise last class. But I'm going to walk through some of those, and then we'll also talk about this as an overall setup as your multi-page document. So I'm going to go ahead and open up InDesign CS6. And I probably should have already opened it because we know things take a while. Okay, so it's open. I'm going to create a new document. Okay. Now, at this point in time, I'm envisioning doing a portfolio. I'm envisioning that that portfolio would be in landscape orientation, so the long direction. Okay. I want the binding to be in the middle, and I want to have content both on the left page and the right page. So if that's the case, I'm going to make sure that I select a page size of letter, my orientation to be sideways. We can see the little person sideways. And I want to make sure that I've checked the box for facing pages. That means that they're going to be spreads as I work through. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and set my margins. Right? Top margin is going to be 0.25, and I'm going to type in IN because my units aren't currently in inches, but if I type in IN, it will do that for me. And my bottom is also going to be 0.25 IN. Oops. Well, I hit enter instead of tab. So I'm going to go back to my margins and columns, and I'm going to adjust the rest of these. Now, remember I wanted my inside margin to be twice my outside margin. If I were to try to change that right now to 0.5, they would all change because they're tied together with this little chain icon. So I'm going to uncheck this chain icon, and I'm going to change my inside margin to 0.5 IN. Right? And then I'll go ahead and say OK. Okay? So now as we look at this, this would be the first page. Right? The first page would be the one that's on top of the stack. I'm not going to worry about the first page just yet. I'm going to do the first spread, which would be the next page. So I'm going to go to Pages right here, and I'm just going to create 2 new pages. There's a New Page button right here, and we'll get 2 new pages, so pages 2 and 3. And really, for the purposes of today, I'm going to start my work on pages 2 and page 3. Okay?
How do you add the pages?
There's a little new page button right here at the bottom. Okay? And somehow my margins didn't stick, so I'm going to go back to margins and columns and change this to 0.5. Oops, sorry, 0.5 IN. Let me switch my units to inches, and let's try that one more time. All right, there we go. I'm going to press Control 0 to see the whole page there. And now I'm going to be working as a spread, right, which are these two pages together right there. Okay? So the first thing that I need to kind of work through is that this is going to be my introductory page, the page that's about myself. Okay? But I'd like to start to establish some general guides for how I want to divide up my page. Okay? And how do I want to kind of cut up the page and make certain columns on the page and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the Pages window, which is up here. And you see at the top, we have our basic pages down here. But up above, there's something called the A master, and then there's two pages together. Okay? What InDesign has the ability to do is to create a master page that can be applied to regular pages, such that something is consistently applied page after page. Okay? So I'm going to look at the master page for the A master, and I'm going to show you an example. Okay? Let's say that I put a square on the master page. It's just a black square like that. Okay? On every page that has the A master applied, that black square shows up. Okay? When I'm on the page, I can't select or do anything to the black square, because it's on the master, not on the individual page. So it shows up on every page, page after page. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So things that happen on the master will show up on every page. Now, I'm not limited to having just one master. I can create a new master. We could say, let me create a new master. Now I have a B master. So I have an A master, a B master. I can keep going with C, D, E, etc., depending on what shows up on a given page. So I'm going to work on the A master for just a second. And I'm graphically going to look at this spread and start to divide it up a bit. Okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work on a layer. So I'll click on the little layers window. I'm still in the typography workspace. Doesn't really matter for right now. We'll stay in that. I'm going to create a new layer. So I'll come down here to the Layers menu. It's called Layer 2. I'm going to rename this Layer 2 to be called Layout. Right? And I'm going to uncheck this box right here for Print Layer, which means that the stuff that happens on this layer won't ultimately pre-print it, because I'm going to put guides and that sort of thing on this layer. Okay? So I'll uncheck the Print Layer, and I'll go ahead and I'll say OK. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and divide up this page so that I can start to see how this, this page layout will work. Okay? So we'll start, and again, I'm on the master. I'm on the A master right there. And I'm going to start dividing up this page to look at it as an overall spread. So there's a variety of ways of doing this. Right? In the last lecture, I pulled up an example slide. And let's see if I can pull it up so you guys can see it here. Give me just a second to download this. Come on, website. Let's go. I was going to try to show you the graphic of this. Well, I'll just continue while it's downloading in the background, and I'm going to start with a layout that's more on the arbitrary side, using a little bit of math to kind of divide up my page. Okay? So you guys have heard of the golden section before, right? So there's a magic number that will help you determine the golden section. It's 0.618. You just have to memorize it. Okay? But I can take my 11 inches. Let's see, there's got to be a calculator here. I can take my 11 inches and I can multiply by 0.618, and it's going to give me 6.798 inches, right? So if I were to drag a guide over here and I went 6.798 inches over this direction, right? I'd be able to divide this page as in that ratio, which is always a good place to start. So I'm going to go ahead to make my math a little bit easier. I'm going to start by creating a rectangle. I'll just do a frame that starts right here in this corner. And if I click, I'll be able to put in information. So my width is going to be 6.798. And my height is going to be 8.5 inches. And I'll go ahead and say OK. That then gives me a dividing line that divides this page by that golden ratio, which is nice. Okay? So I'll go ahead, and now that I've temporarily put this in, I'm going to create a few guides to give myself some help here. Oops, wrong. Let me do a line. I'm going to go right on top of this. And again, everything that's happening on this layer right now is non-printing, which is my goal. So we'll do a little line there. I'm going to change the color of this line to be red. And I'm going to change the stroke of this line to be a little bit thicker, just so that I can see it as a guide. So I've divided that up. Right? Let me divide the opposite page over here. There it is. Get rid of this. Zoom out a little bit. So you can see that I've divided the page into the content area and the text area. Okay? Now I need a little bit of extra guides around these lines. These are, again, temporary. So let me go ahead and create some actual guidelines. And I'll do that. I'm going to press Control plus to zoom in on this side for a second. And I'm going to come over here to my rulers, and I'll drag a guide over. Right? And if I hold down Shift, it will actually jump to the ruler up above here. But I don't need it to be too close. I'll go maybe something like that. Right? And that'll give me a little break between my content. I'll do the same thing right here. Like that. And now, right, I have my pages divided up in kind of a nice manner. I'd like to find a nice spot to divide up so that I had a flow line that would go across the top or the bottom as well. So let me do a few more things. I'll again use the line tool. And this is where maybe by now it's downloaded. Ah, perfect. There we go. So this was a slide in last lecture that you probably saw on YouTube that talks about how do you divide up the page, right, using diagonals, etc. I'm going to use these same diagonals to help divide up the page. Right? The difference here is that they're using them to create the active content with some margins around them. I'm not going to worry about that, but I do want this flow line, which is what I'm going to create. Okay? So let me go ahead, and I'm going to draw a line from this corner to that corner, and a line from this corner, oops, down to this corner. And then I'm going to cut this like that. Go go back and double check here. So do that. And I need the X. Oops, I missed the whole page here. And that. Of course, that's right behind that, so we're going to have to make a little adjustment to that end. There we go. So I've divided this up to help me out a little bit, right? Where this line crosses, I can pull down. And notice, by the way, if I pull down a guide and it's inside the page, the length of the guide is limited to the page. If I pull down and it's outside of the page, it will cross the overall page. Okay? So I'll use this as a guide. I'm using this 1/3 line as content. Where that crosses like that will give me a line across the top that's reasonably proportioned to the rest of the particular page. Okay? So let me add a few more guides here. We'll put one right there. And we'll put one right there. And now, if I turn off that construction layer here for a second, of course the guides are on that layer. I'm going to select the guides really fast. And I'm going to make a separate layer for guides. And move those onto the guides layer there. Now I can just turn off all of those diagonals so that they don't get distracting. And there I have some basic layouts established, right, for the pages. Now remember, because I did this on the master, when I move down to pages 2 and 3, they're going to already have those guides assigned to them, which is the idea. Okay? So now let's start to play around with some content. Right? I'm going to work on creating 4 to 6 pages today. Right? So I'll go ahead and create a few more blank pages for myself. The first 2 pages were going to be information about me. Okay? So I'll use this basic guide to set stuff up for myself. Right? So let's start with a little bit of text. Right? I'll make a little box right here. And let's say, remember, I want to pay attention to my fonts, my font choice. I know the fonts on my Mac far better than I do here. Let's start with just an Arial font. And right, I'll put my name. I'm going to increase the size. And 26 point feels about right. Okay. I want this to come down and rest right there. Okay, so I've used that. Remember that when I start to create text, I want to make sure that I use my paragraph and character styles. Right? So in this case, I'll go to character styles. I'll say new. This character style 1 is going to be heading. And I'll say OK. Let's make sure that is all the heading style. Perfect. Now I'll create my next block of text, which is going to go below. I want an extra little border there. So let me jump back up to my A master. And I'm going to draw a guide down here. Right there so that I have the same spacing. Okay? And let me go back to that first page. Oops, I did it in the wrong order here. There. There it is. Okay, so I've got my name. Drop that down a little bit more so it's right on the line. Then I'll use my text, and this will be information about myself. And I'm going to be consistent. This is going to be Arial. And I'm going to do it in 10 point. And we'll say I can't even type clearly. Okay. Now, actually, as a placeholder for right now, I'm going to look up Latin text placeholder. on Google. And when I do it, right, I can get some right. We've got a variety of examples here. Right.
Is there a particular reason people use Latin as?
It looks, when you look at it, the word, even though it's unrecognizable gibberish, it looks like the right lengths to match up with an English sentence. So when we look at this, even though we can't see what it says, our brains say, that looks like an English sentence. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this for a second and jump back over to InDesign and paste that in instead, right? Because it gives me a little bit better text here, right? And so that matches up. I think this probably needs to be a little bit narrower because it just feels like it's a little bit too thick. And to me, this is still a little bold, but I don't have, let's see if Arial has, let's try narrow. See if that looks about, yeah, that feels a little bit better, right? And perhaps I really need a little bit more spacing for this to read, so I'll bring that down a little bit more. Remember that we can, as we start to set this up, we can always flip. If I go into my view, I go to screen mode, and I go to preview. Okay, my mistake. The text that I just wrote was on the non-printing layer. Let me fix that. That's why it disappeared. Screen mode, normal. All right, let me take these layers. I need to go back to layer 1. There we go. And so I want that to be my current layer. And then when I go to view, screen mode, preview, right, then it's going to show me what the text by itself looks like. Okay? So I've started this. This is information about me, right? Perhaps this really needs to go on the other side of the page because this maybe should be the table of contents. Right? Let me go back and make that adjustment. I'm going to go to view, screen mode, normal. I'm going to jump back here. We're going to take both of these. And I'm going to paste them, and we're going to drop them right over here. Okay, now here is a little bit of a challenge. Okay, it's on this side of the page. Do I justify to the left? Do I justify to the right? What looks right? Okay, and so in this context, I'm going to leave it like this with the ragged edge here. Okay, then over here, I'm going to change this to be index. And in this case, you know, it may need to be something where I have some individual line items. So let's say project 1. And let me zoom in here for a second. Okay, and I want this to be somewhere in between. So I did 10 point, let's do 12 point, 14. I don't want it to be narrow. We'll do regular. And let me do it project 1. Right, and again, this should be its own character style. And we'll call this project. Right, so I have project 1. Right, then we come down here, project 2. 2. 3. Etc. Now maybe I also want there to be some page numbers associated. So let me create a new text box. Goes this way. And my justification this time is going to be here. And this is maybe 01, 03. Actually, this would be 2, 3, 4, 4. 6, and 8. Right? Now remember, since I had my styles already set up, we can go to my project styles. It's going to match. The spacing is going to match. Okay? Now, these look very close to each other in terms of lining, but I would like them to be perfectly lined up. So I'm going to use a tool, and this was something I was going to show you last class, but you know, I apologize. Today's going to be a little long because I'm going to duplicate a few things. Okay? I'm going to go to Window, Object and Layout, and choose Align. This will allow me to use the align tools to align two objects. So in this case, if let's say I had this down here and I wanted them to line up correctly, if I hold down Shift and I select both of them, I click one more time on the object that I want to stay put. That's called the key object. Then I can use this align tool to the top to align this object to that object, and they're perfectly aligned. Okay? So now I have project 1, project 2, project 3. If we press Control 0, we can see the whole page. And maybe I go in to Window, where is it? Sorry, View, Screen Mode, Preview, and we can see how that's set up. Right? Looks like index doesn't quite line up with project. That's going to bug me. So same thing, I may need to nudge that over. If we zoom out, we can see that there's my text about me. There's my project index. So you can see how I'm starting to formulate this. Okay? Now I can move on to the next pages down here. Control 0 there. Let me go, once again, I'm going to go to View, Screen Mode, Normal. Now I see everything. Now it's time to put in some images. Okay? So let me zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to use this half of the image, right, for one big image that spans across. So we'll go with the frame tool. We'll go from right here all the way to that line. And I'll go to File and then Place. And let me go into Today. I've already, well, I thought, oh, how nice, right? Conveniently, it didn't update my presets of my images. So let me drop a random image in. All right, so let's say that I have, I need my size to be a little bit bigger for this to work. So I'm going to go Search Tools, Size, larger than. All right, let's say it's this one. Let me view the image. There it is. Okay, I'm going to save the image as, make sure it goes into my folder. And I apologize, I thought I had folders that already had this information. So I want that image to go into this frame. So I'll go to File, Place, and right-click, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. And there it is, filling that piece of the frame. Okay. Then over here, right, I might need to include, and I'm going to borrow this text for just a second, those two pieces. I'm going to press Control-C to copy. When I get to this page, instead of just pasting and then moving, I'm going to use the option for Paste in Place. And when I pick Paste in Place, it will show up, it's supposed to show up in the exact same place. How nice. You always have to love it when stuff doesn't work the way it's supposed to, right? Edit, paste in place. There it is. All right, should show up in exactly the same place. But in this case, I want my project. So this is going to be called Project 1. And I wanted the body text from over here. And I should have a character style for body text. So let's do that really quick. Body. Clearly, I cannot type today. I apologize. Oops. Let me copy that. And we're going to come down here. And I'm going to paste that body text there. Right? And now we can start to see this as a layout of a particular page. Do you see how I'm kind of evolving this? Okay? So you're going to do the same thing today where you start with your index page. And I know it's not complete. Right? You're not going to have everything just yet. But we're going to work toward starting to create your first couple pages. Okay? So let's say I wanted to add another page. Right? And I'm going to add another page. Oops, they're out of order. Let's put these down below. Right? And this time I want to use multiple images. Okay? So let's say that the first image is going to go right there. The second image is going to span across there. And the third image is going to be down below there. Okay? So I'm going to use several different images this time. Okay? When I do that, right, I have to go find the images first. I apologize for that. Let's go back. Okay, so there's an image. Let me save this image as, save it right there. And I'm going to drop that one into this center frame right here. And I'll go to File, and then Place. And I'll drop that image in. Okay, right-click, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. Right, and now I have that particular piece. I may need to adjust it so that the right part of the building is showing. Right? I may have also discovered that I really want this image to go across multiple frames because it just doesn't fit right. Okay? And let me use a color image instead for just a second. Okay? Let's say I went to File, Place, and I dropped this image in again. No. Okay, fitting, fill frame proportionally. Okay, so now it fills up that frame. But maybe I want it to go into this frame as well. Okay, I can do something where I join multiple frames together. Okay, or maybe the strategy would be to divide this one up. It depends, but I'll show you with these two. So right now I have this frame and I have this frame. If I select them both, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select them both. I can come up to Object, Paths, Make Compound Path. And you see that now the X spans across both items. And when I go to File, Place, right-click, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally, it goes across both of those pieces. Okay? So if I had a grid of squares and I wanted the objects to span across those squares, I could do that as well. That was something that I showed last lecture on YouTube that you guys can see, but I wanted to point it out today. Okay, so the one other thing that I want to show before we get too far along is one thing that you can do on the master relating to how you put page numbers in a particular page. Okay, and so I'm going to start back on my A master, right? And I want to put a page number on the page. So I'm going to use a little text box down in the corner of the page. I'm going to adjust so that it's right justified over here. And I'm going to use the character style of my project, which was the capitals, right? And then I'm going to go up to Type. I'm going to go to Insert Special Character. And I'm going to put in the markers current page number. Okay? And it shows up as A, which is a little weird. Right? But the reason it shows up as A is because I'm on the A master. Okay? So now we have that. Let me drop it so that it's right there. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste this and put it right over here in this corner. And I'm going to change the justification. Oops. So that it's that direction. Right? And so now, in the A master, I have those two pages. But if I go to every page, see how this is now page 2. That's now page 3. This would be page 4, if we could see it. There's page 5. There's page 7, etc. Right? It's a pretty cool feature. Okay? I could take this one step further, right? Because I can divide up the page. So we said that this first page is project 1, right? So it starts on page 4, 5, and we'll do it for 6 and 7 is all project 1. Okay? I can add something starting right here to page 4. If I right-click on page 4, I can go to numbering and section options. And I can choose to start the page numbering at a specific number, though odd numbers are always going to be on the right, even numbers are always going to be on the left. You just have to be aware of that. That's just the way it works. Okay? But I want to add a section right here, a section marker. And I'm going to say under section marker, this is project 1. Project 1. Right? And section prefix, I'll do P1. Okay? I'll go ahead and say OK. And there'll be a little triangle that appears above that page. Okay? The advantage here is if I go back to my master next to where the page number is, I need to make this a little bit bigger. Right? I can add under type, section, insert, special character, markers, section marker. I'll add a bracket. And now it's going to say on these pages, project 1, 5. Right? On this page, it's still project 1, 7. If I had another set of pages like that, starting on page 8 here, I could right-click and say numbering and section options. This is now going to be P2 or project 2. Say OK. And lo and behold, that changes to project 2. Right? So I can actually organize everything using that numbering and section options. It's certainly more advanced, but I want to kind of show you this as part of the process. Okay? So I apologize for talking so long today. Part of the reason that I had to talk so long is because of last class, and I was trying to get other stuff imparted to you. What I'm looking for today is kind of the precursor intro page, followed by a page that has your best photo on it, followed by a page that has your Photoshop edited photo for project 102 on it. Okay, that's kind of the trajectory of where we're going, but I'll take however far you get. Make sense? All right. Okay. I will pass out grade sheets in just a second, and then we'll go from there.